Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thank you all for coming out. Wow. So this project, engaging with Stefan. So Stefan and I, we have constantly been working together in one way or another, whether in its physical capacity or even just in our talks that we constantly have around the works. I think ultimately we have always had this fascination with material culture, and the sensibility of all the materials that we use, whether if it is with the fiber or even with the metal or the steel. And it's been an interesting engagement, whereas for me, looking on his work, I don't even see it as steel, I see fiber when I engage with it. So just being able to work alongside him and to just dive some of his pieces took me on a different direction as well in some instances. But it was almost as if we were counterplaying against each other and against the notions of identity and existentialism as we engage the work.
So the pieces that I'd given to Katrina came out about 2018 solo that I'd done, which was actually put on both by Katrina and Campbell at Grosvenor Gallery. And from that point, Chung Knight was the one who had opened the floor at that showing. And in conversing with Chung Knight, I had wanted to go in a direction that instead of using the female form more, to go and actually start discussing using the male form. One, Katrina came to me about this idea of combining two artists collaborating with work. That was always in the back of my mind. And the thing is, I've always been intrigued by Katrina's work. It's always been very feminine, sensual, soft. And when she was like, yeah, man, she's going to team with me, I was like, wow, here is a point where I can actually push that masculine form that I've never really explored because I didn't see the point in it. Most male artists discussing male art using the male form, it's like throwing the same male concept in your face. And for me, using the female form over the years to discuss more social issue, not female issues or male issues, just general social issues, has always actually triggered people's response to me being a man using the female form, which I've always had fun with because I like to rub people the wrong way, just even in the way I dress and walk around Kingston. So this being another way of trying to figure out, would Stefan the male be able to do the same thing with a male form within this space? And it's been a very extremely intriguing process, especially when I asked Kat about the two pieces once she handed them to me, what they were actually discussing initially. Because I didn't just want to create a work that had no representation. I wanted to know where she was, where the work was portrayed, and then stem from that a connection.
I mean, it was funny how we even selected the pieces that we exchanged, because initially we were approaching this where we would have started something completely new. But then he was working on a piece for a commission that he had, and I saw it and I was like, yo, Steph, I can't get that piece. I was like, no, I really just kind of fell in love with that, and that kind of sparked the idea of taking something old and making it new again, and how do we breathe new life into the pieces that we create as artists, but even just releasing that energy, knowing that I had actually taken this to a point of completion for me, and now allowing somebody else to say, okay, how can I engage with this and reinterpret that piece that is given to me? And even though, even with Steph saying that I always found it fascinating that he's always doing the female figure and the female form. And when I engaged his work, I saw singularly that. Even with curating that show, and I know it's probably not a good thing, but with curating that solo show for him, I didn't even encounter the works as a male and a female engaging each other. Because even when you look at them, immediately you see the female body and the female form. But yet there is a face that's hidden in there, which is that male encounter with the woman. And it's always as if there is this constant play between our sense of identity and who really rules who, and how do we really engage with each other. So I think engaging with them and with his piece, and even with the conversations that we had, whereas who is really the dominant figure? The man is the one who builds the home, the house. He constructs the house versus the woman who actually makes the home. And then him having these objects that feel rather violent in some way, shape, or form, not necessarily always meaning that it is a violent engagement. And that kind of sent me down the route of the matrixial encounter of the phallus versus the matrix. And how do you really define the two, and can you separate the two, even though if you're looking at, because I think our engagement has always been a Lacan versus a Ettinger's approach to even just psychoanalysis, but even just existentialism, when we're diving into what is the woman's identity versus what is the man's identity. How do we define it? Do we define it by our sexual objects? Do we define it by our sexuality? But even what is that first point of encounter in just our existence, which is the womb? And how do we negotiate those terms of what that object is? It's the first place of home, that first place of safety, but then it's also this object that creates such pain and trauma. And then it's engaging with that sensuality, but also just that fetishist nature that one may have with this object, where we're always constantly returning back to the womb one way or the other, whether it's through the vagina, the portal, but then know what is this object of safety? And how does the man engage with that object? How does it define him as this strong masculine figure versus her expected to be this delicate object? And are we really truly that? Who is he? Where does he place himself? And how do we negotiate those terms?
So, like with this piece, when I started Katrina about this work, the wedding veil represented so much about a woman taking the man's name, losing somewhat of herself in that role. And I started to consider what was the man's role within that space. Because the thing is, men are brought up within this society to be the person to make the home, be the breadwinner. He's the one who is supposed to try and make her feel safe. But in reality, I grew up in a household of only women. My mother brought me up as a man in that space. In my house, my sister is the bread earner. She is the one who generated the funds and all of that to create the house. So really and truly, does a man really hold any kind of weight in today's world? A man is just a sperm donor. You remove that structure from a woman and she makes her own money, creates her own life. He is useless. He is irrelevant in that equation. He is literally, and if a woman chooses to not have children, then he is completely irrelevant at every aspect where that is concerned. So for me, where this was looking at what was that role of, especially with all of what was happening around the time when we were building this, where a lot of men were being in the media, beating women, killing women, being aggressive towards their female partners. But why? They were feeling that they were not secure in their space. And a man is not taught how to show emotion properly. So for me, this was more a discussion as to that rage, that support that he did not learn, does not have. He is trying to be supportive of her, but within his own space, that lack of emotion, that anger that he constantly is building within, shows through his actions. This was the most difficult piece. But that kind of clicked once I hung up the piece in the space. But when I was actually discussing and gotten the writing from Katrina with this, I was completely and utterly stumped. Okay, the vagina. And I was looking at it like a few nights and it just nothing would come. And then like one night I was driving home and there was a song that played and it hit me based on the lyrics that yes, man takes 9 months in the womb and then he spends the rest of his life trying to get back in. He's also continuously trying to control the vagina, the womb, her space, but not just hers, his own space. Man within this system, within this society, walks around, especially Jamaican men, that they are the big dick swinging. I am the royal cock. You need to worship all of what I have created and I survey. You have no choice. Your womb is mine, the children are mine. And I was like, this needs to be something. So initially, the first piece of this was actually larger and it took up most of it. And I started to lose that whole feeling of the vagina. And there was a lot of restructuring and conversing with Katrina when I was working on this piece, kind of figure out where and how it actually started to unveil.
But is he really that royal member? And it's the matter of that real convoluted encounter between the two. Because we have this high expectation. You see yourself as this object that's only here to mass produce. But then now, what does the woman see herself as? She's this object of fetishism. She's this object of sexuality, whereas you are constantly engaging and wanting to re-enter. But then even with that desire of the man to enter or even of a woman to enter, the object in itself, it creates life. And in that creation of life, there is destruction, because there's the destruction of the woman and her identity. During just that process, she becomes a completely different creature, And then now versus even who is it that heals her? There's this constant desire for the other to come and enter in the space, or at least not even so much the other, but the non-I, to be here to cover her, and to become that sense of support. So there's always this desire to be pulled back to the man, even though there is this constant battle between how we engage each other and negotiate our relations. And I think that encounter is what drives me a lot. How do I see you engaging with the opposite sex and vice versa? I mean, with our stigma, social stigma that we have here in JA, even just walking down this road as a woman, you seen a man coming up in just his shorts and stuff, immediately you put on your barricades. You are up and you're on guard. And the person could be completely innocent. I mean, even with Stefan, some people seeing him on first go, immediately they're like, no, stay away. But he's one of the sweetest persons there is around. Yeah, we let it out, no. But just how do we really define that relationship, and why is it necessary even for us as women to constantly be on guard against this object in which we are constantly seeking and reaching towards, even within our existence? So, I mean, with the pieces, it's about that convoluted encounter. It's about that twist. It's going all directions, especially with the first one over there at the entrance. Yes, person see it, immediately they see birth, but then is it really birth? Is it birth? Is it destruction? Is it healing? Are you being stitched together? Am I safe? Am I not safe? Questioning our existence. as we engage each other here, being drowned in the societal expectations that are of us or for us as we exist.
And the thing is, like, even from the start of this project, when people are talking to me about, you've given over this work to another artist, how do you feel about that? And for me, I've always wanted my art to be interactive with people, even with the points and the sharpness. When Katrina said, we're going to switch over, I'm going to give her a work, I had no reservations. I fully wanted to know what she, as an artist, was going to take my work and just run with it
I think that's the beautiful thing with what we have created in the exhibition is just that we were able to just release
and let go.
and let go because some people say it's because we know each other, and I really don't think that is it. Because I think you and I, we would let go of work to almost any other artist and allow them to dive into it because we're constantly fascinated with creating. We're constantly fascinated with how you encounter the work or how you engage with the work as to how you even reinterpret it at different points in time. So yes, we may even have one mode of engagement or at least one concept that's around the work. Ultimately, our interest is in how do you feel. Our interest is in creating something that allows you to have an experience for yourself without us upon the first point of contact with it. And I think that's really what drives us a lot as we're constantly creating.
Yeah, because I'm about the process. I mean, once the work is finished, I can literally carry it in my front yard and destroy it, burn it, and remodel or give it away.
And it's okay.
And it's fine because the work itself is done. The process that I went through, for me, is what I can hold on to, and I can then regenerate that experience in something else. And so, taking Katrina's work, which was an experience for her, especially reading the information that she gave me, I could literally feel her as I started dismantle and create work that mapped and then transitioned that piece to something else, and especially this one. For me, that was the easiest one to tackle, but this was the one that taught me the most about the entire experience.
Strangely enough, I don't know if you've had experiences with works whereas you're creating and there are these moments in time where you just don't feel as if it sits right with you. Because that piece specifically with the wedding veil, I went through drama with it and I don't know why. But it started in Berlin, it came back to JA and it was sitting there. I worked on it, my sister worked on it, and we were just there. And I'm like, I don't know what the heck is going on with this piece. So when it was a matter of giving you something, and then with the pins and the needles and everything, I said, okay, let me give you this. And I can actually sit comfortably now and look at it and feel as if, yeah, it reached where it needed to reach at this point in time. And it's a strange thing that you even said that with that one being the easiest, because that piece over there with the red, I had multiple encounters with it. It was the last one that I finished. Initially, it was meant to be very subtle. I literally, in terms of engaging the two, the first one that you enter and see there with the yellow, it was meant to just, I wanted to just take over your piece. But with the one over there with the red, it was a matter of, okay, let me be subtle and keep you in it. But as the more that I kind of went in and I just kind of went into those cracks and started putting the threads and the fiber, it just kind of felt like it wanted to grow and grow and grow more to just completely consume the identity of whatever it is you had. It's fun. It's been fun. Anybody have any questions?
Questions?
Or comments?
Okay, I wanted to just say generally that I really appreciate the idea behind collaboration. As just a part of their education. I really applaud the effort that over the last 5 shows.
Two.
Three shows, the third one.
This is
This
the
is
third
the
one.
third in the
Right,
series,
so
yeah.
I think it's awesome. Like I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments or questions?
No. That's it?
Stefan, you're saying the male is and outside of that is irrelevant. Also, if the woman does not desire to have kids, then the male becomes totally irrelevant. I'm wondering if for the same reason that made the female irrelevant as
Well, I mean, from the standpoint of the male, if a man has no need for sex, then what purpose does she? No, no, no. As a fact, if a man chooses to be celibate, then a woman becomes irrelevant. If he chooses to not have kids, then what is the purpose that she serves within his life?
Are you going to gender question?
Of course.
So I mean to say, when you remove the gender roles, okay, the traditional gender roles, does it then mean that the gender question?
So that partner.
No, but what gender means? You know, like what does a woman mean when a woman is not performing the mother function, right? And when a father is not performing the sperm donor function, is he still a man? Is he still, like, so what happens in this hybrid situation?
But then again, is it more of a concern to really bring forth a child? Does the man really go around thinking about being that paternal figure as a woman is constantly engaging or desiring to be that maternal structure and constantly battling with that? So they know it's kind of, why would you say, as a sperm donor, that's all he would do, but he's interested in sexual engagement. But the actual carrying of the child and that actual 9 months of bearing it, then who does that role or that engagement? How do men engage with that? Do he desire it? Do you desire it? And how do you desire it?
well. I guess society is changing. It's changing in that regard because men are also paternally.
Yes.
Yes, there's the paternal leave.
I think we've moved away from the traditional roles of
Exactly.
To a point.
But then, whether or not that role, so if they're partners, what's the purpose of the partner if the need for sex is not there? The need for connection is not necessarily there. Then, if there is no partner, what then does the person's position hold? Why do they then choose to exist?
And it really is just these questions that we're throwing out within our work, really questioning how does that engagement really happen, that encounter.
Because I mean, like the big dick swinging could still be that dominant male, even if it's in a space where he's around other men. Because within that kind of environment where you are amongst male friends, one of the males tends to be the leader of the pack. He's the initiator, and everybody else goes, "Yeah, man, let's go do this."
But is that not true of women also?
Of course. So, but the thing is, remove the pack. What is his position? Is he still necessary? Is he still then big dick swinging?
So then big swings are always in contrast or in relation to someone else.
Just, well, of course. Even within himself, because, for example, if you as an artist position yourself to every time that you create a work, you are trying to be better than your last self. Isn't that the same kind of attitude? You're reaching for the stars because it's humanity. Man woke up one day and said, "Look at that little blue thing in the sky. I'm going to try to reach it." What is over that ocean over there? Let's just go. It took an effort, but he had to visualize that he was better than his regular self. He was above rules and regulations set forth. Somebody said to him that he can't, and he said, "Okay, no, but I'm going to." Even if God in his mind said, no, that's not within your skill level, he still got up and did it.
Well, yeah.
I know that for Katrina, the work was inspired by the reflection of the psychological and psychosocial. The feeling that Stefan did a similar sort of consideration of the psychosocial as far as the content of the work and how you guys can work together. I wonder, though, in relation to people, Greg's own response not too long ago, if you consider as well a historical reading of the kind of ideas that are bringing forward in the world.
Well, for me, I was coming from more my background as it relates to the role of a man in a space, but also looking at where socially partners can either be women and women, men and men. There is a dominant and there is someone who is the caregiver. So one takes the supposed male gender role of being the support for the household. The other person takes on the more emotional support for that person. In many cases, the roles can be equal, but it's that work between the two that you choose how you engage. What I've noticed over the years is even within those spaces, someone there is a lack of communication as to their emotional state. So they're not able to emotionally express themselves to their partner, and therefore rage comes into play. Anger comes into play. They're quick to anger, quick to express themselves physically. In some of those spaces, they're still the one that's trying to control their partner for whatever reason. Maybe it's a situation where they are they feel irrelevant to that person, or they feel irrelevant in the household. And so they are more going to try and control their partners, who they see, the friends, basically controlling the vagina,
I
even if it's
mean,
a dick.
ultimately, I've never really dived into the historical or colonial, post-colonial engagements intentionally within how we define one's identity, mainly because I think that that engagement is almost universal in terms of what the position of the man was once meant to be, being he's the owner of the home, he's the one whose name is given to the woman or the children. Just how do you navigate around that, and how it has shifted now within our generation, where, especially within Jamaica more than anywhere, I think that in Jamaica women have so much freedom more than outside, because even if you go in the States and you're looking and you're seeing just those restraints and those barriers in terms of the position of the woman, it's almost like, why are we still even there at this point in time? You know, so then how do we really define ourselves and put ourselves on even ground? And how do you really define what that even ground is? Is it that a man's meant to open the door and you can't open the door for yourself? How do you negotiate those terms? You know, I mean, why should I take his name? Why not him take my name? You know, I mean, how can we really shift those gears? And I think we've really done that a lot here in Jamaica moving forward, because we have marriages happening and we have non-marriages happening in terms of the legal sense of it, which in and of itself is a different structure as to how that even became this union or this desire for union. Yeah.
I give that preference to ask this. You cannot just explain. Do you see your work as merely describing or reflecting your experiences, or is there an activist element that is built into what you are exploring and saying to your work?
Silent activist.
That's how that is.
And I say silent activist because it's really a reflection of what I've seen around me. It's been a reflection of even my own experiences. A lot of my works previously have been mainly autobiographical, and in recent times I am now responding to things that I'm seeing. I'm now attempting to make a response, neglecting who the I really is, but also attempting to identify the other and how do they engage with me or even with others around them. Things happen around us. And I think a lot of time we do not necessarily embrace the actions that are actually happen and get lost within the emotion of who we are, as opposed to seeing things for exactly what it is. We have a tendency to put up that gaze, the Freudian or Lacanian gaze, whereas I do not see you, I see what I desire of you. And you are not giving me what I want, and therefore I project my desires or my fear of what you are not giving me. And it is interpreted in multiple different ways, which have a tendency to even throw our men down a direction in which we attack them for things that aren't necessarily things that we should attack them for.
I don't consider myself an activist in any respect. I tend to carry my work through a set of processes, firstly for self-exploration. Secondly, if I am presenting us an idea, I will always opt to present it to create a disturbance. Like myself, I will walk into a space just to disturb the space, like throwing a stone in a pond.
Silently activating.
Again, not with any purpose other than to disturb the status quo or the persons that are there. So like with these, for me, I was just creating a disturbance to then get feedback based on the experience from what I observed of people experiencing the work. If people got it, great. If it disturbed them enough for them to leave the space, even better. So like with the bodies of work that I've done over the years, like with my raw series, which were just hearts, which, funny enough, I had presented at Grosvenor. I had to put up an entire wall of disclaimer preventing persons to make sure they did not walk into that space and be disturbed, only to find my entire show of work 1 week later in the Observer, in their art page of every single image done. And the disturbance I got every day after that was like insane. The number of people that would literally, with all the spikes and stuff, would come up to me and go, "You are the artist." I'm like, wow. I was hoping that similarly, like persons coming to this would then have that kind of similar disturbance.
But why disrupt?
Why not? People
Why
grow.
disrupt? Is it for
People
yourself?
grow.
So why do you want to? You say you're creating for yourself in some way, but yet with that intention to disrupt the experience or the viewer in some way, shape, or form, isn't that activating it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't go out of my way to be an activist.
And I don't either, but it happens. But it happens. I mean, in all of it, it's really just a response to what we are feeling, how we exist, how we see others exist, and we really
social
want you to
commentary.
feel the work. How do you encounter it?
Okay, so you are suggesting that you would like your work to be somewhat disruptive. It's not supposed to be a quick thing that you say, oh, this is nice. The question is this: what are you trying to achieve in disrupting a space? Or are you trying to achieve anything at all? I suppose I would imagine that you're trying to achieve something. What is it?
For me, it's for you to get a feeling and an experience. How do you react to it? When you see it, it should hit you in your gut, or it should warm you.
Exactly. I don't. No, it's true. Because the thing is, I want that when the person leaves the space, they're not going to be the same person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the
I think
reality
that's
is
important for both of us.
So that's
normalcy.
that answers it for me.
Normalcy is for me boring. If you are the same person, which is why, people ask me why am I still at Edna, and the fact is, if I can stimulate a student on a Monday and who they come back to school on a Tuesday and it has changed, then I have affected change.
And I think that's just the creative nature of us as artists. How do we create change? How do we impact others? How do we allow you to feel, want to know more, and to just dive in?
And push against whatever grain that you existed, not just within your family or your space, but even within your own mind. Because as an artist, if you can't push yourself, then why are you still being an artist? What are you learning from every time you create a work? Are you the same? Are you still tackling the same information you were 20 years ago? But why? Is it still something that you've not let go? Is that baggage still holding you down? Or are you growing from it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's going to make what's in this place. I kind of must have looked about like compost plants or
There is.
Well, man is defensive.
And so is the woman.
So for me, my defensive mechanism is, especially in the early years, walking out of Edna with a muzzle on, changing my hair color every day, wearing black all the time. I mean, you literally create a barrier for people to separate.
And the woman is
Well, with both pieces, but that also is relevant in how we deal with within our own relationships. So, as a person within a situation, how do you navigate your partner? And whoever those partners are, even if it's among friends, how do you navigate a space where you want to be loved, but you also have a defense that you've been hurt so much that you're going to have to work hard to come and talk to me? Because even with a cactus, if you're going to prune a cactus and you're going to transplant a cactus, there's a lot of care that needs to be taken in handling that plant. And trust me, I've had a lot of experience with those prickly plants.
Katrina, though, that with your work, I don't get that defensive, it's more welcoming because of the softness of the material.
that which a woman is seen as. She's seen to be someone who is welcoming, warm, that maternal structure, but she always has to have her defense up. Even though those objects look very warm and welcoming, it can suffocate you. And we have to walk, and we are constantly walking with our defense. We have two totally different defense mechanisms, but we're always constantly on the defense.
And whereas on a road, woman walking on the road with the same kind of spikes and muzzle, a man will still approach her.
Yeah.
Whereas a woman will not approach a man.
Yeah.
And so it's still that reality. In the system that we are in, no matter with the bitch face that a woman walks on the road with, some men will still invade that space.
And it's not the same for a man. I think that's a
Yeah. I mean, I get a rarity where I'll be in Mega Mart and some random woman will come up and stick her finger in one of my ear holes and be like, oh, this is nice. But typically I walk down a road and everybody moves. Men and women alike. True. But the funny thing is, like, I've been to New York and I get similar reactions there. I step onto a subway with this and people will make space.
But in New York, you have the women too.
that if a woman presents herself with that aggressive, she would also be left alone. It's in Jamaica where you make feel that they're more powerful.
Is it really in Jamaica? Is it really in Jamaica only though? Because it might just be the geographical differences as to how we nurture and the cultural engagements, how we relate to each other. Because I mean, in other cultures, I hear, because if you think about the way we culture, the woman is the head. She's the one who the child, she owns the property, she controls the man. The children takes her last name as opposed to, so then I think it's based upon whatever cultural appropriation based on the location that you are at. I mean, here, yes, women immediately, we become defensive to secure ourselves more than anything, whereas he's defensive to keep you away, but then traveling, everywhere we go, I think there are different points of engagement, different expectations based upon our cultural engagement as to what each role or gender role can counterplay with each other.
But I understand that in those cultures, the women conform more. Even though women have that status in the society, they conform more to the society and become to the society. It may be that in Jamaica, when a woman does that, she's not conforming.
She's rebelling against.
She's not fitting into the value system of society, and therefore, all the time what's wrong with you.
But he's not trying to fit in either.
You know what culture is accepted.
Are we really changing? I don't think we are really changing, because right about now we already have the community segregations, and all the different communities engage differently with each other. And until all of them come together, there will always be that separation. We're going to constantly have that, whereas here it's okay. It's okay to walk down the street in your panty here, but then it's not okay to do that here. You're seen as two totally different persons. But then can we move away from even this thing of where we are growing a boy to become a man or a girl to become a woman? Why can't it be a case where we're just nurturing you to be a good human being? Because then when we start putting in those genders, that's when the whole conflict kind of arises amongst us. I mean, ultimately, a mother scolding her son, it might even just be her own trauma with what that father, the presence of that father of the child, or even her own father, and negotiating those terms. So they know, why is it that we have to be put in that category and that label? Perhaps that is where we're constantly finding that struggle of shaping you to be this very specific gender, as opposed to just being a human being who exists, a good person, understanding with compassion, within society.
And the thing is, like, one of my experiences when I was at Wolmer's was, being around fellow males, and you talk about, these are guys coming from similar households, one mother, maybe father and mother, good youth, dating a girl and it not working out, and dating a lesbian not working out, and friend cut and go through, and it's like, yeah man, you always have the girls, and you're like, okay, you get a nice girl and then she shred you, destroy your heart, walk over your heart, and you pick it up, you're like, all right, you dust it off, and then two twos, you're like talking again, I'm going to do what Tony do. I just going to go and find girl and cut and go through too, because it look like it work. Because it's trying to be a nice guy, get put on the shelf. So in other cases, it's not just the household that is the problem. You are observing other males, other situations, and you start to realize, if that work, and if that makes me happy, then why not just do that?
All of this sounds like mama. Like really broad. What is your impression of mama? Coming out of all of this.
I'm not sure, because I was brought up that no job was beneath a male. I learned to iron my own clothes. I learned to wash my own clothes. I learned to cook. I learned to clean. in the 80s when the song came out, that would have been a mama man. And what that is now, because the thing is, when you look at young men who are living a bachelor's life,
Is a means of survival.
of course,
Whether you're a man or woman, it doesn't matter. That's your way of surviving. But who is that? That doesn't make a man. That makes a strong man. It's a normal man. Comes back to the man who does not stand up to his responsibility, who does not know what it is to be a man and to be responsible enough to carry his weight through his mate, through his family, through his friends, through his community. You can walk with your head up high and falling down on those principles.
I think there's this negotiation of who is responsible, but also even thinking about co-responsibility in terms of situations as it pertains to relationships between the two sexes now. Us really defining what is it that we really want out of that engagement with the opposite sex. You know, is it that he is not giving me enough? Or am I asking for too much? Or am I even responsible for the self and my role within that definition of what man is, or even of what the woman is? You know, so it's not even so much mama man or saying, okay, let's define this man down this route because he's not satisfying the needs of the woman, whatever that need may be. But if it is a case that he's not doing that, do we separate? How do we separate? Can we separate as opposed to now looking down on that person and putting him in this category that we're stumping him? And I think a lot of times within our Jamaican society, we are constantly stumping on the man's identity. I mean, even when we look on Laura's and Paula's work, if we're supposed to go on that whole historical context of what the man was meant to be in terms of being that sperm donor, you know, how to make a slave, how to make a child, a black man, then now, do we as women still look to the man in such a context? Or do we move beyond that and take that co-responsibility for what our position is in relation to him, and to be able to stand firm enough to say, this is what I want, this is I am, he's not giving it to me, so let's let him loose. Because he needs to go and figure himself out, and there's a woman that is there for him as well. So then for me, I don't really want to be putting these labels on any of us. You know, it's really about just understanding one's identity and existence in this day and time, to then know how do you navigate your singular space and not project that screen of desire that you see within the other person.
and the issue is some men will continue to present themselves in a space that will continue to develop the wrong kind of male. Because for many years for 7 years, I did the set for Contender. And in 7 years, I had to deal with the caretaker for CBA. And in the nights, we'd have sit down while the show is going on and we'd have conversations. And one of the conversations that hit and stuck with me still was, he's an older man, probably in about his 60s or 70s at the time. And he said he had 25 kids that he did not maintain at all. He had no connection with these 25 children that he fathered with multiple women. And I wanted to ask him what kind of background would make him feel that this was the right thing. He literally basically fathered 25 kids and walked out the door. These children have nothing to do with this man. And he was now in a room on the property looking after one of the latest children, who the mother dropped off at the door at the entrance to CB and left. Now, those 25 children, be them boys or girls, will now grow with some kind of issue. Possible lack of father in the background, possible more male dominant or female issue. The mothers may also develop hatred for those children because of this man. And the cycle is just going to continue.
But it doesn't have to.
What I like about the work is I think it expresses what I think is a very profound thing about life, where there's the contradiction and the paradox, the soft and the hard in all of our experiences, the complexity, and also the male-female duality that's within all of us. And that's how it works.
How do we really separate even the sexes from our conversation? Whereas if we're looking on our generational engagement, how we were nurtured in any way, shape, or form, it is vitally impacted by just the fact that he was a boy and I am a girl. You know, whereas growing up, you are required to take on all the domestic things. I was taught all the domestic things. My brother, he could run all over the place, yeah, but then I had to be in the kitchen, and I had to learn how to clean, and then I had to be outside and running all over the place with him. Versus now, perhaps, I never did it, but perhaps with Stefan, it might be a little bit different, even though I know him can't cook enough. You know? In terms of he's allowed to really go out, drop down, bust him head, take those deep, dark risks, you know, that harms himself, whereas we are then no, you know, delicate things, stay inside, don't go ramp with them. And it's a funny thing, because even with that engagement, I've always been seen as when I was younger, I was a tomboy. And I got in fights, serious fights, get stabbed in hand, all of those kind of stuff, to the point in which, and I think that's where there was a dynamic shift in how I grew up, was that I was then sent to grooming school. I was taught how to sit, I was taught how to eat, how to carry myself. And strangely enough, there is where I learned the classism that was present in Jamaica just by being amongst those girls. How you relate to the darker skinned girl versus the lighter skinned girl, versus the girl whose head was completely shaved versus those who had the long hairs. And just how do we navigate that relationship to who I should be shaped as? I was grown up as a tomboy. My brother, I was outside catching lizards, all of that kind of stuff. So I kind of ended up having this balance between, eventually having a balance between being a girl and being a boy, and how do we really identify the self and exist in the self.
It's funny you mentioned home economics as part of. See, every tribal man you know knows his way around.
So
It's a particular tribal thing that our men aren't crafted in the way other men are in other sort of metropolitan. What do you want to say? That they're somehow completely so removed from the home.
Yeah, because in my household, there was me and my sister and my mom. Yes, I grew up around helpers, gardeners, but in the original house, we had chickens. Chicken have head have a cut off, chicken have a prep, you know.
good.
And the cleaning of the house, everybody was involved. The washing of things, everybody was involved. I was at the skirt tail watching cooking. And when I went to Woolmer's, if I leave Woolmer's and reach home early, food I have to put on. So understanding that kind of relation, I understood the role of a man in a house was just not about earning some money, but about maintaining what he has created. But the reality about being around other men and seeing how other men, especially like uncles and exterior males, operated within their household, I was astonished that that was not a constant thing for everyone. There were some men who just did not cook. They were not in the kitchen. Don't know if they ever learned to cook. That conversation never came up because those conversations just were never had. You know, some situations, the women took care of the kids, the men brought home the money. The main thing of the household was very specific. And like my uncles would come down for bird shooting and we'd go shooting. And they were very, very specific. I mean, they would travel during carnival season and come down and the party happening and we'd all as men stand up in one corner. Like, and watch the women have fun. And I was like, this is a thing? Okay. Whereas when my mom used to carry me to these parties, everybody danced. But there were always these parties that happened starting on a Friday and finished Sunday night. But I was around that kind of engagement. And watching, growing up through Wolmer's, went to Prairie for sixth form, art school, and you observe the different types of males in the society, I started to realize that not every person gets the same background or upbringing. Not everyone gets the same kind of exposure. And unless you are placed in a space to learn, do you actually grow up? Do you actually mature? Do you change? And if you remove certain things from that period, who are you at the end of that? So if you remove you were taught to be the male, to be the household earner. If you remove the rest of persons, then who are you making the money for? If it's for you, then what kind of house are you trying to create? And are you creating a house or a home? And naturally, if you bring a female into the picture or a partner, does that partner create then the home? Because I've had conversations with persons that them live in a house. Yeah, they're with somebody, but every time they come through the door, it's a house. They don't feel like they're coming home.
Yeah.
And then the question I ask them continuously is, then why are you with that person? Because if you're with somebody and they don't generate that feeling of coming home, then why are you existing within that space and environment? Why not change?
It's interesting hearing you and listening you talk about that because it's almost as if, even though we're coming in from the opposite sexes, we had this balance as we were growing up between the role plays as to what we're expected to play as a boy or a girl. And I'm almost even wondering if that is why we perhaps can see things differently, how we relate to even just the material culture of letting go a work and allowing another to come in. Because there's this sense of balance of engagement. There's this sense of freedom to just be and exist.
Of course. Because for me, no work is menial. And no work or no existing space is only man or woman. If men could give birth, then I would say, bring it on. Why not?
Careful now.
But no, I mean, the fact is, if no work or none of these things are specific to man or woman, then, and if the floor was open for it all, then why not?
I mean, I'm constantly interested in just that balance of negotiation. Just why do we think we must take such positions in society, or you are required to be a certain way? What if we, and I'm not, without the labels, I mean, I've been called a feminist, an activist, yada, yada, yay, but can we just create as a reflection of life, as a reflection of our existence. Why are you a painter versus a sculptor or a textile artist? And I think that was really one of the questions, even with just this exhibition. Can we find that point of just being able to see and reflect what we see without being placed in a category, a certain bias that is faced? Because I think those categories are really what creates those negative stigmas around just how we carry ourselves and how we exist with each other within a sphere.